assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga, glories to Srila Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswata Deve Gauravani Prachadane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarane Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasri Gaur Bhaktarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Yesterday I explained how in chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita Krishna is explaining first of all about the Atma. So this is what we call Atma Jnana, or a portion of Jnana Yoga. But he also emphasizes Karma Yoga as a means to get to Jnana, or understanding Atma. So the two processes are linked together. But he also emphasizes that we can't do Sakama Karma Yoga with desires, but we have to do it without material desires. And this will lead favorably into understanding Atma. And then there's a description of, Krishna gives a description of a person who understands about Atma, one who's fixed in Atma. He's called the Sthita Pragya. And there's a whole series of verses that describe this person. And one of the, of course, Sthita Pragya means he's fixed in the Atma and he's detached from the material world. So the example was given here of the turtle. He easily withdraws his senses from sense objects like a turtle withdrawing its limbs. And he is situated in Pragya. Pragya means wisdom or knowledge, in this case knowledge of Atma. So if we have a person who is in this world, but we find he is in control of his senses, is not overwhelmed by enjoyment in this material world, we can say to some degree he's situated in Pragya. If he's not situated in Pragya, and he looks like he has sense control, then he must actually have some defect in his senses or something, because generally if he's doesn't have a higher taste for Atma, he'll have a lower taste for material things. So the real person who controls his senses is the one who's situated in the Atma. So the example of the turtle is given because turtle withdraws its feet and its head into the shell. So similarly, at will, the person situated in knowledge can stop his senses from flowing outward and enjoying in this world. So, in other words, he's got control of his senses. So, though Krishna is talking about, understanding Atma, he also indicates that this cannot be separated from a connection with the Lord. So we can't have Atma Jnana or Jnana Yoga with no relationship with Krishna. So in verse 61 he says, the person who after restraining all the senses becomes devoted to me will maintain steady realization of Atma. He whose senses have thus been brought under control is Sthita Pragya. So the Sthita Pragya is not only understanding Atma, he's also connected with the Lord, and that enables him to steadily fix himself in Atma rather than in material things. So devotion is also necessary in this whole process. And Baladev was some quotes from the Vishnu Purana. Just as fire with upraised flames, assisted by the wind, burns up dry wood, Vishnu, situated in the heart, burns up all the sins of the yogis. So that is why we say that the yogis also meditate on Paramatma, and this helps them become fixed in Atma Jnana. So then, after that, Krishna begins to describe what happens. This is describing your senses are under control, restraining your senses, yeah? So if you don't restrain your senses, what happens? For the person who meditates on the sense objects, attraction arises from attachment. Attachment arises from attachment arises desire. From desire arises anger. From anger arises loss of discrimination, which means no power to judge what is right and wrong. From loss of discrimination comes loss of remembrance to control the senses. From loss of remembrance comes loss of determination to realize Atma. From loss of determination, one sinks into samsara. So if we don't control our senses will go upward, going to objects, we get attachment, we get desire. If the desire is not fulfilled, we get anger. Then we get, we lose our sense of judgment of what is right and wrong. We forget to control our senses, and when the senses will go into sinful activities, consequently, we lose our determination to realize Atma, and we go on in the material world. So, how do we prevent this from happening? We go back again to this. We also have to fix ourselves on the Supreme Lord. So in other words, in order to realize Atma, we also have to involve worship of the Lord. And then we can realize Atma properly and senses come under control. So in this way, Baladeva Jabhusan is showing that bhakti is pervading all processes, whether it's karma yoga or jnana yoga. Bhakti yoga is also necessary in order to succeed. And of course, he's not imagining this, because here we have the verse. He becomes devoted to me. So there is mention of the Supreme Lord there. So though chapter 2 is largely about jnana and karma yoga, we do have the Lord introduced into these processes to make them successful. Okay. This is another famous verse. The Sthita Prajna is awake in the night when all other living entities sleep. The night of the observant Sthita Prajna is the time when all the living entities are awake. So the Sthita Prajna lives in a different world from the normal people of this world. What he considers good is opposite in the material world. What he considers bad, material world considers good. So this is the day and night. They're completely opposite. The Sthita Prajna is not interested in all the sense gratification. And the person in sense gratification is not interested in understanding Atma. So they live in two different worlds. Yeah? Okay, so if you're situated in the Atma, then you don't have a desire for these pleasures of the material world. So, then we have this other verse, quite a kind of a poetic verse. Just as the rivers enter the ocean, which has fixed banks and is never quite full, so the objects of enjoyment enter into the Sthita Prajna. But he remains peaceful. This is not so for the desire of these objects. So in this analogy, the person fixed in Atma, the Sthita Prajna, is compared to the ocean. And as the rivers enter into the ocean, but they don't disturb it, so the objects of enjoyment enter into the Sthita Prajna, but he is not disturbed by any of these things. So in other words, he can observe the world and participate in the world, but nothing happens. He doesn't get karma, doesn't get disturbed, doesn't develop desire and hate, all these different things. He's completely free from all these disturbances. So that's like the ocean. All the rivers go in, but ocean remains peaceful.
Maharaj, it comes to mind the Yamunacharya's famous slogan. He said, whenever I think of sex life, I curl my lips and speak in disgust.
Yeah. Yeah. So complete detachment from material world when he sees the things of the material. It's like everything opposite. Other people are very interested in the sense gratification. When he sees it, he's completely disgusted with it. And it's not an artificial imposition, it's just a natural result of higher taste. Higher taste, and lower taste is completely useless. So this is just the interpretation of the verse. The sense objects come to this citta pragya. So the sense objects is form, smell, taste, etc. through the senses. And this is all arranged by his karmas. He gets certain types of enjoyment in this world. But in spite of all these different happenings, they could be good or bad. He had bad karma also, some disturbing elements in society, but he's peaceful. The sense objects come to his senses. The citta pragya does not undergo any change at all because the satisfaction of realizing the bliss of Atma. But he who desires sense objects does not attain that peace. So the result for the person who is citta pragya is he's very peaceful in this world, not disturbed by things like other people are, the kami. O son of Pritha, this is the situation for, this is the last verse actually of chapter 2. This is the situation for attaining the Lord. Attaining that state, one is not bewildered, and even at the time of death attains the Lord, who bestows an eternal form to the devotee. So here we come back to devotion, and we got mention of the Lord. So the whole chapter 2, though it is concentrating on karma and jnana, ultimately has to lead to Supreme Lord. So one performs nishkama karma yoga in order to become steady in jnana, and then as a jnani, one must connect with the Supreme Lord. So if he wants to maintain that status of citta pragya or concentrating on the Lord, he has to remember the Supreme Lord at all times. So this eventually brings him to bhakti yoga. So in other words, though this chapter is a little bit indirect in speaking about bhakti, ultimately it is the two processes of nishkama karma yoga and jnana are leading to bhakti. So it finally ends in Krishna. So then we come to chapter 3, which is called Karma Yoga. The title of the chapter is called Karma Yoga. So this is the lowest yoga. Karma Yoga, then we have Jnana Yoga, Astanga Yoga, and we have Bhakti Yoga, according to chapter 6 of Bhagavad Gita. So Karma Yoga is actually the lowest. So Karma Yoga was also mentioned in chapter 2. Now there's more details given of Karma Yoga in chapter 3. We should understand what Karma Yoga is. Some people in the modern world say Karma Yoga, oh, that means let's do some activity. It's not any activity. So in the yoga schools, Karma Yoga, yeah, we should do something, so they go out and do some activity, any old activity, but it doesn't mean that. It is a very specific type of activity governed by the rules of Varna and Ashrama. That's what Karma Yoga is. So we can equate Karma Yoga with Varna Ashram rules. And they are basically rules to minimize sin and maximize punya. So in that sense, they're not directly devotional. And the goal of that system is artha and kama. You follow dharma, varnashram, to get artha and kama. To get your material needs satisfied, eating, sleeping, mating, defending, and over that you get some kama, you get some extra enjoyment. So that's the immediate goal of the Karma Yoga system. But as is explained previously, and in this chapter also, it's one step towards Jnana Yoga, Astanga Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. So it's not an independent process. It's one step, the first step towards higher elevation. So in this chapter we have a praise for Nishkama Karma Yoga. And through that one can attain jnana, knowledge of the jiva. And actually not only this chapter, chapter 4 continues, chapter 5 continues, and even chapter 6 continues the same idea of combining the two processes of karma and jnana together in order to get to bhakti. So it's explained here that jnana is yoga. And what is yoga? Process by which a person is joined with Atma. So that's what jnana yoga means. Joining or understanding Atma. Yoga comes from the verb yuj, as it says yujate. Yuj means to join together or to unite. The English is unite or yoke. The ox yoke is because two things come together. The plow and the bull come together. It's a yoke. So now yoga means to bring together, to join together. Yeah. So if we have knowledge of Atma, then that is a yoga. Jnana yoga. So karma is also called yoga. In which way? In karma yoga, the person gets purified, purification of the heart. And by the purification, then he gets realization of Atma. So he comes to jnana. So in this yoga, we could say there is the jiva becomes purified of the lower gunas and comes to sattva gun. And then can partake of jnana and realize Atma. So it's the initial purifying process for people. And that is why Krishna emphasizes to Arjuna, you must do karma yoga, you're not qualified for jnana, because it's the first process. Before you do jnana, you have to be qualified. To become qualified, you do karma. So therefore he emphasizes that without performance of prescribed karmas, a person cannot attain non-action of the senses. Non-action of the senses was a sthita pragya, like the rivers going into the ocean, not disturbed. You can't get there unless you do your prescribed karmas. By renunciation of activities, you cannot attain liberation either. So you can't just artificially renounce and get liberation. So first you go through prescribed karmas, purify the heart, get to sattva gun, then you're qualified to stop your senses, etc. A person with impure heart cannot attain steadiness in jnana or detachment from actions in the form of stopping the actions of all the senses without performing prescribed actions as part of the cultivation of jnana. And he also does not attain liberation simply by renouncing those actions. The karma yoga itself, we'll see, as I said, it concentrates on avoiding certain acts which are called sin and doing punyas. So the whole of a person's life is regulated by rules in the system of karma yoga. Some of the rules relate to varna, your occupational rules. Rules for Sudras, rules for Vaishyas, rules for Kshatriyas, and rules for Brahmanas. And then we have rules for everybody, rules of conduct for everybody as well. If we look at these rules as devotees, we'll find, I don't want to do that. Because if we look at the Brahminical rules, they are quite, we can say, tedious to follow. All the different things you have to do. And therefore we call this, if people are attached to those rules, we generally like to call them smartas. He's a smarta, he's following all these rules like this. So Prabhupada mentioned smartas like that, or Bhaktisiddhanta mentioned smartas, or Bhaktivinoda mentioned smartas, they're attached to all of these Brahminical rituals and rules. So that's they're following karma yoga, varnashram system rules. So for the devotee, it is not so attractive. The devotee rather wants to simply follow bhakti, but people in karma yoga, they're very attached to following these rules and regulations. There's rules for the body, cleanliness rules. So we're familiar, our rules for cleanliness are superior to those of other people in the world at the moment, like the bathing rules, etc., and clothing rules, etc. Material world, they don't really have a rule, for that. It's do whatever they want, they bathe when they want to, they wash their clothes when they want to. It's like that. But we're very particular, so this comes from the Varnashram system. But they're actually more strict in that system. So bath, that's good. But then, what type of water are you using? So then, what's the best water? Best water is river water, or a lake. And next is a well water. And it doesn't mention tap water at all. That's considered impure. And it should be cool water. The Madhvacharya, Madhva was one of the recent young men, he decided to go to America. And then he came back, and then he said, can't worship in the temple anymore, because when you went abroad, you couldn't bathe properly in the water. You had to use tap water. And therefore you couldn't do your rituals, and therefore you're impure. So you have to do a whole prayaschitta once you come back from America, like this. So they have some very strict rules about just even water, just bathing itself. And then apart from just the water you use, then they have rituals for bathing, what you have to do when you bathe. Then you have to chant Vedic mantras when you bathe. So like that. And then when you have to dry yourself in a certain way. And then you have to put on cloth in a certain way, whatever. And the cloth is clean or unclean according to certain conditions of purity and impurity, etc. Details of everything you do in life. So some people are accustomed to that from birth, so they follow like that. And they see somebody not following, then they'll criticize. And then we go, he's a smart, he's criticizing us. Because we're not so strict on those things, those rules. So those are some of the rules. And then there's rules for society and rules for social interaction, like samskars, etc. Rules for how to interact in family life between husband and wife and children, elders, etc. Rules of respect, all these things are there as well. Those are part of the rules of Varnashram system. So he who, controlling the senses by the mind, aiming for the Atma, performs karma yoga with his active senses at the same time, being freed from attachment to the results, superior to a person acting prematurely from the position of jnana. So Krishna is saying you do nishkama karma yoga. You engage your senses, regulated by rules of dharma and varnashram, so you don't commit sinful activities. At the same time, understanding we have to get to understand we're Atma. So in that way you get qualified for process of jnana yoga. You cannot do it artificially. So not only one has to do nishkama karma yoga, but as in previous chapter again, it also has to involve worship of the Lord, worship of Vishnu. Without performing actions for Vishnu, the people of the world are bound by their actions. That means they get karma. O son of Kunti, perform actions for him, freed from attachment to results. So that's nishkama karma yoga, and also connected to the Supreme Lord. So the whole process of karma yoga here, nishkama karma yoga, is connected with the Lord. So there's a devotional element there. Of course, we can say, well, then it's bhakti. So it is, yes, it is bhakti because it's connected to the Lord, but its main purpose is not prema here. Its main purpose is artha kama. So that's why we don't consider it bhakti. O son of Kunti, giving up the desire for personal happiness, worshipping Vishnu through sacrifices and other means by lawfully obtained wealth, maintaining your body with the remnants of the sacrifice, you will not be bound. So this is how we have to do all the acts of karma yoga related to the Supreme Lord. as well as relating it to Atma. So there's a very nice section here now. This started to talk about, connecting your sacrifice to Vishnu, and then we get into the idea of taking the remnants of the sacrifice. Those respectable persons who eat the remnants of sacrifice are freed from all sins. Those sinful persons who cook for themselves suffer from sin. The personification of sacrifice, Vishnu or Yajna, is the Lord of all beings, whose limbs are the Devas. The devotees who take the remnants to maintain their bodies after worshipping the Lord of all beings become free from all sins accumulated since beginningless time. This purification is necessary because the sins create an obstacle to realization of Atma. So if we want to get to Jnana and realize Atma, we have to purify ourselves. That was already mentioned. So purification process is karma yoga. How do we do that? How do we purify ourselves? We do the karma yoga principles, but aiming for Atma, but also involving worship of the Lord. So in worshiping the Lord, we get the remnants. That is the prasad. So we maintain our body by that, and that's how we get free of karma. That's one of the purification things. Here begins a cycle. Just like in, we have many cycles, environmental cycles, like the water raining down into the ocean or whatever, and then on the land, and then the plants grow up, and then the plants mature, and then they're giving off oxygen or whatever, and helping the animals grow, and the animals eat the plants, and whatever like this. And then eventually the animal dies and goes back into the earth and dissolves or whatever and nourishes the earth, and the plants grow up, whatever like this. And meanwhile the whole cycle with the water is going on. So we have environmental cycles. They say often illustrate in textbooks in schools and things like this. So here we have a cycle also, but it's a little bit different from the cycles we find put in your science books and things like that. All creatures arise from food. That's a general principle, and science also recognizes that. Food arises from rain. Of course, it's earth and then rain. Rain arises from sacrifice. This is not in science. This is something in scripture. Sacrifice arises from prescribed actions. That's karmas. Prescribed actions arise from the Vedas. The Vedas arise from the Lord. Therefore, this all-pervading Lord is eternally situated in the sacrifice. So we have a whole series of events here leading up to Supreme Lord. So, and this is for the human being. Animals do not do sacrifices, but human beings do sacrifices, which are prescribed by the Vedas. So the Vedas are meant for the human beings. And then the Vedas arise from the Supreme Lord. So we have a connection here of the Lord to the human being, to the world. By following the Vedas, then the human being acts properly, and his connection with the earth and the food follows a proper course. So we get a cycle arising from this. Entities arise from food, such as rice, for the food transforms into semen and blood, which in turn nourishes the body. Food arises from rain. Rain arises from sacrifice. Know that action, the performance of the priests for the sacrifice, arises from the Vedas. Know that the Vedas are the source of their actions. Know that the Brahman, the Vedas, appears from the Supreme Lord. So this is what we get here. If we would reverse it. The Lord produces the Vedas. From the Vedas come action and sacrifices. From that comes rain. From that comes food. That nourishes the body. And then the human being can do sacrifices again, following the Vedas and the Lord, and get more rain, get more food, etc. So this is how the cycle works. So we have the Lord, the Vedas, and the sacrifices. This produces the rain. That produces the food. That produces the body. So this is called a chakra, a circle that goes around. And if we interrupt the circle, stop it by stopping the sacrifice, then this system does not work. The body does not get maintained. So this is very interesting because this refers to the human being, not the animals. They don't have to do the sacrifice, and the cycle goes on anyway. But the human being, the sacrifice is in there. If you don't do the sacrifice, the rain doesn't come, the food doesn't come, the body's not maintained. Yeah? So the human being is a privileged animal, a living entity, but at the same time he's obliged to do certain things. He must follow the Vedas, he must follow the principle of recognizing the Lord through sacrifice. Then he can survive nicely, and the world is in balance. Huh? So, what is the reason for this? It's a little bit esoteric maybe. Why the human being has to do this is because the human being is so intelligent that unlike the animals, he can exploit everything on this earth for his selfish interests, and in this way upset the balance. And therefore he has to regulate his actions by following the Vedas and recognizing the Lord through sacrifice. And by that, if he recognizes the Lord through sacrifice, then we can say he understands that he is not all-powerful, and he has not got a right to do anything he wants to on this earth at the expense of all other living entities and at the expense of the earth. So as we see in the Bhagavatam also, we're studying how the Dharma, so that is basically, we can say, the sacrifice. Dharma, the laws of sacrifice, comes from the Vedas. That's the bull. And then we have the cow, in terms of the food, etc., and the rain and the food. The two are going together, and if you separate, if you try to take away the Dharma, then the rest doesn't, the cow doesn't function properly. Then we don't get our food. Earth doesn't operate properly, and everybody suffers. So the human being has to control his senses by following the laws of the Supreme Lord, the Dharma, sacrifice, etc. Then the cycle is balanced for the human being. This, of course, is a material cycle. In order to survive materially, the human being has to follow laws of Dharma and do the sacrifice and minimize his sins. But because it is related to the Lord, then it has a spiritual element in it, and it can also lead us to higher goals rather than simply surviving in this world. So, therefore, everybody should do this Niskama Karma Yoga, make an offering to the Supreme Lord, connect it. And if an advanced person does this, to set an example for others. So we get the famous verse here. The human who is attracted to the Atma, satisfied with the Atma, and completely pleased with the Atma alone because of its qualities, has no need of performing prescribed duties for seeing the Atma. So one who is fixed in Atman doesn't have to do the lower activities of karma yoga. However, whatever actions the superior person performs, other persons will also perform. Whatever scripture the superior man follows, others will also follow. So one will, even if one is beyond karma yoga, one will do karma yoga to set an example for other people. So therefore, Krishna says, even I do not give up these activities. I also set an example for other people. So this is a general principle, and even the ducks are following that. I was just looking on internet, and they said, yes, the example, this is actually not for ducks, actually it's for human beings. It's whatever the parents do, the children will follow. So the parents set a good example, the children follow. This is the mother duck sets an example for the little ducks, and they follow after, and they act like ducks. They become proper ducks. So if the human beings, the parents act like that, then the children will also follow. So on a larger scale, we have the whole country, and then we have the leaders. The leaders have the proper conduct, then naturally the people will follow. If the leader has bad conduct, everybody will also have bad conduct. It's a natural principle. Just as the ignorant people work with attachment, O Bharata, the wise desires to teach the people should perform work without desire for results. So the people on top, the leaders, should do nishkama karma yoga in order to encourage everybody to be active and work and follow the principles of Dharma and connect that also to the Supreme Lord and not be lazy or not be sinful. So the people on the higher level do this as a matter of duty. We do the karma yoga, but again, we never forget the Supreme Lord. We have to connect it with the Supreme Lord also. Offering all activities to me, being fixed in the soul, without desire for results, without possessiveness, and without suffering, fight. Arjuna is a kshatriya, so he should do his duty and fight, but those activities are also dedicated to Supreme Lord. So it is nishkama karma yoga with connection to the Supreme Lord. So this is again emphasized here. So it's never independent of bhakti. Here he talks about the parinishita devotee. That's a devotee who does his activities. He's fixed in devotional service. And he also follows the varnashram system, not because he's attached to it, just to set an example for others, as we see previously in those verses. Do your duty and set an example. So that's the parinishita bhakta. So he's doing his karma yoga. He's also fixed in not just jnana, but in bhakti. You should be devoid of the concept of being a doer. As a servant dependent on the king performs actions according to the king's order, you should perform your actions according to my order with a desire to teach the people. So here we have karma yoga turning into bhakti by offering the results to the Lord. It is better to perform one's duties even if faulty than doing another's duties perfectly. It is better to die being situated in one's own duties. Performing another's duties is the cause of misfortune. So this is very relevant for varnashram system where the varnas are strictly defined. So if one is qualified as a kshatriya, one should not do brahminical work. If one is qualified as a vaishya, one should not do kshatriya work, etc. It becomes sinful and destructive. One will just create problems by that. So the principle there is act according to qualification and not beyond or not below. And that's how you get satisfied and you please the Lord. The same principle applies not only to varnashram system and karma yoga, it's also between jnana and karma. If you're not qualified for jnana yoga, you cannot do it. You should go back to karma yoga. So that's also, and then we have bhakti yoga. If you're not qualified for bhakti yoga, then you do karma yoga or jnana yoga. And in bhakti yoga, then we have qualifications also. If you're qualified for renunciation in bhakti, that's fine. But if you're not, then you have to be a grihastha in bhakti. If you're qualified for sadhana, you cannot jump to prema and act like a prem bhakta or a bhav bhakta. We call that sahajiyism. So everything is according to qualification. Arjuna then asks the question, well, why do we commit sinful activities even if we don't want to do them? And then Krishna replies, it is lust and then anger arising from the mode of rajas. No, this is the great devourer, the great sinful one, the enemy. Therefore, in the beginning, regulating the senses by nishkama karma yoga, O best of Bharata lineage, kill this demon which destroys scriptural knowledge and realization of Atma. So he's relating this whole process of controlling the anger, etc., and the lust to progress towards jnana and atma. So if you don't regulate, you destroy everything. So lust and anger are like demons which will impede one's progress towards atma. Okay, and then there is another interesting point in this chapter. It said the senses are supreme, but superior to the senses is the mind. Superior to the mind is the intelligence. What is superior to the intelligence is atma. So we have a hierarchy of what should control. Huh? So we put the body at the bottom, and the senses next, and then the mind next, and the intelligence next, and the atma at the top. Huh? So all of this is necessary to ultimately conquer over lust. The problem here is that generally the intelligence does not act as a superior element over mind. It gets reversed. And the mind becomes, the intelligence becomes the slave of the atma to simply find means to get sense gratification. So the real intelligence is called viveka, which means the power to discern what is the correct value. And generally with using scripture. So viveka means to judge properly according to scriptural values. Then, if the mind is controlled by that, fine, good. And then, but superior to that, of course, is the atma. Ultimately, the soul is superior to that, and we have a taste for the soul. Then the intelligence will follow. Then the mind will follow. Then the senses follow.
Could you explain more the difference between the mind and the intelligence?
Yeah. The mind is all your desires, your impressions, your hatreds, all your impulses, etc., and your memories and all that, in the broad sense of the term. Like and dislike. Intelligence is discriminating power. And now we can analyze things. Just like in science, they use intelligence to analyze things. This is this, this is that, whatever. Categorize. That's all intelligence work. Mind is a more emotional. I like, I dislike, etc. So, in scripturally speaking, of course, that intelligence means ultimately we can distinguish atma from body. And that becomes jnana. So that buddhi is used equating with jnana. Through jnana we understand atma. This way we control our senses and whatever like that, because we have understanding atma. So it's we can say intelligence or buddhi is the analytical power of the human being, which should operate in cooperation with Scripture in order to guide us in the proper way. Otherwise, intelligence on its own materially will take us in the wrong direction. So it has to be under guidance of Scripture as well, for the devotee at least. Realizing that the soul is distinct from the intelligence, fixing the mind in the soul by the fixed intelligence, destroy the enemy in the form of lust, which is difficult to conquer, O mighty armed Arjuna. So again, we have to relate everything here to the Atma has to be related to the Supreme Lord also. And karma leads to purification, purification leads to the understanding of Atma. Okay, I can do chapter 4 also. Okay, so we'll just go to chapter 4. This is a chapter in which it looks like a little diversion in one sense, because the first, second chapter, third chapter about jnana and karma, and then particularly karma yoga in chapter 3. So he begins this chapter by glorifying the lineage of knowledge, the parampara system, Huh? And then he talks about his appearance and his pastimes, etc. And then he goes on to talk about jnana again in prescribed actions and glorifies jnana at the end. So the chapter is sometimes called Jnana Yoga, the whole chapter. But it has a variety of topics, and particularly the first part's all about Bhagavan. So it's not all jnana. But there's, in the later part, there's a connection between everything, all other processes and jnana yoga. So at the beginning he says, I spoke this indestructible knowledge to Vivaswan, he spoke it to Manu, and Manu spoke it to Ikshvaku. And then he begins to describe about the form of the Lord. So here we actually, as we saw in the second chapter, there was an indication where Krishna said, I exist eternally, you exist eternally. So there's a difference between the Lord and the Jiva. So here we get a more expanded version of who that Lord is. Though I'm unborn, the Lord of all entities, and have imperishable body and qualities, I appear in my own body by my own mercy to deliver the Jivas. So the Lord has his own spiritual form with his particular qualities. So that's made definite in this fourth chapter. And then why does the Lord appear in the material world? Whenever there is destruction of dharma, O Bharat, and the rise of adharma, I manifest my body. In every age I appear in order to protect the devotees, to destroy the demons, and establish dharma. He who understands in truth my spiritual birth and activities attains me on giving up his body and does not take birth again. So here we have not jnana yoga, now we have bhakti yoga here again coming in. Now understand the nature of Krishna's form and his activities. And then one gets out of the material world and goes to Krishna. So here also then we have another very nice verse, important verse also, which is often quoted by our acharyas and other places in commentaries. I respond to persons according to the manner and mood in which they surrender to me. O son of Pritha, all blessed men follow these various paths of worship of me, the one Lord. Accordingly, as you approach the Lord responds. I, the one Lord of all beings, possessing many forms like the Vaidurya gem, certainly respond to the devotees according to the mood in which they worship me. I am merciful to them, appearing before them with form and mood appropriate to their type of mood. So in other words, if you want to worship Krishna as a servant, Krishna appears as the master. If you want to worship Krishna as a friend, Krishna appears as a friend. If you want to worship Krishna as the lover, then he appears as the lover. So according to the desires of the devotee, the Lord will manifest a certain form. If the devotee desires a ferocious form, then the Lord will appear as Nrsimhadev. So not only with Krishna and the different rasas, but with other forms of the Lord, according to how one worships the Lord will appear in that particular form. So therefore the Lord has many, many forms for the particular devotees. So here it mentions the Vaidurya gem. This is a particular jewel that manifests different colors at different times. So by holding up that jewel in the light, it may appear yellow. We turn it a little, and the angle of the sun is a little different, then it'll appear red. And we turn it again, it'll appear blue. We turn it on, it'll go green, like this. So the Vaidurya can manifest various colors. Most jewels, of course, is one color. Ruby is always red, or emerald is always green, but Vaidurya gem can sparkle in different colors at different times. That's a very special jewel. So the Lord is compared to the Vaidurya gem because he can manifest all these different forms as he chooses, but he does so in response to the devotees. And because of that, the Lord has many, many forms with many, many colors and many, many moods. So. So here we also talk about, back to Jnana again. He who sees inaction and action, action and inaction is intelligent among men. He is qualified for liberation, has performed all actions. So the desire of liberation who sees action undertaken for purification of the heart as a form of Jnana, since its aim is Jnana, and who sees Jnana as a form of action because action is the means to Jnana, is intelligent. In other words, he who knows that karma and jnana are one because the goal is one, and thus seeks out the truth about Atma through his actions being performed, his intelligence are learned among men. So in other words, action is not necessarily wrong as long as it's leading towards jnana and knowledge of Atma. So we see inaction and action. We have karma yoga, but we see its goal is inaction or jnana. So there's nothing wrong with that. So we should understand that karma yoga is a means to get to jnana.
What is action and inaction?
Action and inaction. So we have the jnana, and within that, then we can also have karma within the jnana itself. In other words, it's one with it, it's non-different from it. So we shouldn't say that jnana simply means inaction. In order to get there, we have to do the action. So it will include the action in it. So in inaction, in jnana, we will also see karma as a necessary factor to lead there, purification to get to it.
Does that mean that there can be reactions even if you don't do anything? Like if you get karma by doing
inaction.
inactive,
yeah, well, the idea is inaction, just stopping activities, is not, say, recommended for people unless they're qualified. So you don't do jnana and stop your karma unless you're qualified for it. And if you stop doing those activities when you're not qualified, eventually you fall back and do the activities anyway. The wise say that he is learned who engages all activities while being devoid of expectation for results, because he burns up all actions by the fire of his eventual realization of Atma. So we can do activity with the understanding, the goal, and then through that you burn up the reactions and karma, etc. So there's no problem in doing nishkama karma yoga. And then there's a whole section here about sacrifices. It's a metaphorical in one sense. Oblations consisting of Brahman, with Brahman as the ladle, is offered into the fire which is Brahman by the person who is Brahman. The person Brahman attains Brahman by being absorbed in actions of Brahman. So everything is Brahman, and the whole is a person doing sacrifice, and all the elements become Brahman. So the action is a sacrifice. So action itself is nothing wrong with it, if its goal is spiritual. The Lord describes how action, along with its components, take on the form of jnana, which means non-action, by searching out the Supreme Atma, the Lord in all actions. So here we're going to be on regular jnana up until bhakti, when we take the Lord as the source of everything, or Brahman as the source of everything. So action is not necessarily bad. So then he discusses various types of activities of karma yoga, which will lead to jnana and then to Atma. Others, however, karma yogis engage in worship of devatas. Others offer oblations into the fire of Brahman by means of a ladle. That means the regular sacrifice. The Naishtika brahmacharis offer the senses into control of the senses. The householder offers the sense objects into the fire of the senses. So we have various persons doing symbolic types of sacrifices. But they're all leading to jnana and understanding Atma. Having described how actions become jnana by having the quest for the Lord and the jiva as the goal, the Lord now specifically speaks of different types of karma yoga.
What does it mean to have the senses
offered into the... so what this means is you... sense objects are the senses go to the sense objects, and you get material enjoyment that way. Yeah. The householders are grihastas, so then they enjoy the senses. Basically, that's what it means. But because it's connected with karma yoga and jnana, it's done in a regulated way, leading to atma jnana. So there's no problem for them in doing so. So here it's kind of represented as a sacrifice to indicate it doesn't have negative consequences if it's done properly.
You don't have to put the word in transplant.
All of these knowers of sacrifice destroy sin through sacrifice. After enjoying the material results of the sacrifice, they attain the eternal Brahman. So we go from karma yoga, and then we get some enjoyment there, then we nullify that, we get to jnana, and then finally you get to Brahman, or the Supreme Lord. Thus, many types of sacrifice have been described in the Vedas, knowing that they're all based on prescribed actions of body, mind, and words. Know that they are all based on prescribed actions of body, mind, and words. Knowing and practicing this, you will be liberated. Know that these sacrifices are born from activities of the body, mind, and words. After understanding, that is, practicing sacrifices described by the Vedas as a means of attaining Atma and the Lord, then seeing both Atma and Paramatma by realization that arises from the practice, you'll be liberated from samsara. So again, we can go through this process, but we have to connect it with the Lord, then we get liberation. Without worship of the Lord, even with jnana, we don't get liberation. So Paramatma must be included there. So, here, near the end, we find, know the Lord by surrender, questioning, and service. The seers of truth, the Gyanis, will teach you this knowledge. This is a very famous verse. Tad vidi pranipatena verse. So how do we get all this knowledge of all these sacrifices, including jnana and bhakti? Go to the devotee of the Lord. After thus teaching knowledge of Atma and method of realizing that knowledge of its components, the Lord now teaches knowledge of worshipping the Lord's Swarup. To attain this knowledge, the person must take association with devotees. O son of Panda, realizing the Lord and the Atma, you will no longer be bewildered. By this loss of bewilderment, you will see that all jivas are situated in individual bodies and also in me. As a blazing fire burns to ashes all fuel wood, the fire of realization turns to ashes all karmas. Just as a blazing fire turns fuel wood to ashes, the fire of knowledge, the fire of realization of one's Atma and Paramatma, turns to ashes all reactions, including those arising from pious acts, but not the prarabdha reactions. That's the reactions of this lifetime. Though prarabdha karmas are extremely weakened by the influence of this knowledge, they are still situated in a person with realization of Atma by the will of the Lord in order to preach the proper path of conduct. So what this means is, through jnana mixed with bhakti, you can destroy your karmas. But he says the prarabdha karmas of this lifetime remain. What that means is your body is still here. If your prarabdha karmas are completely annihilated, your body will also disappear, because it's a prarabdha karma. So the Lord keeps your body here in order that you do some preaching work. So in that sense, prarabdha karmas remain. So the prarabdha karmas are weakened, but the body at least remains. And with that body, then you can do preaching work for the Lord. Therefore, cutting all doubts which have arisen from ignorance with the sword of knowledge, taking shelter nishkama karma yoga, rise, O Bharata. With the sword of knowledge taught by me, cut the doubt in the heart concerning the Atma and perform nishkama karma as taught by me. For that purpose stand up. So Arjuna had a conflict. Maybe I should just give up everything and be like a Gyani or a yogi or something and be a beggar and not fight anymore. Then Krishna says, no, you do karma yoga. You do nishkama karma yoga. You do your duty, set an example for others, don't be attached to the result, offer the results to me. So that's the conclusion of Krishna. So here he's encouraging him to follow that path of nishkama karma yoga and stand up and fight as a kshatriya. So the action has two parts, like grain with its husk. The rice has the rice is the superior part. The husk is the inferior part. So therefore we have karma and jnana mixed together, where the jnana, knowledge of Atma and Supreme Lord, is the internal, like the rice part, and the external is the karma yoga. But the two go together. So this whole chapter of Jnana Yoga is showing how karma yoga and jnana yoga are combined together in order to produce bhakti. Okay. Fine. Any question? This is Baladev's commentary. Yeah, which is what Prabhupada based his on also. Vishnu's is a little bit more bhakti, less karma. He puts more bhakti into it. He balances out the karma and more here. Yeah. Okay, fine. Hare Krishna.